Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the COVID Long Haulers podcast. We are a community of long haulers brought together by this illness. We share the stories of folks who have been through it, who are going through it, and how they're surviving it. My name is Jessie, and I will be your host for this episode. Our guest today is Emerson, joining us from Switzerland. Welcome to the show, Emerson.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Emerson. I'm 20 years old and I use they, them pronouns. Before I got long COVID, I was a university student. I was studying Eastern European languages and history, and I was a climate activist. Also, always very careful not to get COVID. I masked even after the mask mandates ended, and I made sure to get the vaccine as soon as that was available to me, which meant that I got the first vaccines in the summer of 2021, and then I was boosted in March 2022. After that, I was always too ill to get further vaccinations, which is why I never was able to protect myself further. Because this is often discussed and relevant when we talk about long COVID, I do have pre-existing conditions. I was born with a congenital heart defect, and I also have endometriosis.
When was your first infection, and how many infections have you had that you know of so far?
So far, I've had 4 COVID infections that I know of.
Oof.
My first infection was probably in February 2020, so before the lockdown, before we were even properly aware of COVID and all the implications that it has. I got infected at school. A teacher had COVID. After that, I was super careful not to get COVID again. But then in July 2022, I got COVID from a friend. We were at the lake. It was like a little party, and I was social distancing as well as possible, but because it was outside, I wasn't masking. And a friend of mine, her dad had COVID that we did not know of at the time, and then everyone at the party had COVID the next day.
Yeah, and you were outside, so you probably assumed that you couldn't get infected based on what health experts were saying at the time.
Yeah. And then I got COVID again a couple months later in October 2022. That
Oh,
was probably the worst acute infection I ever had because I developed pneumonia at the same time.
three
I
months
got it at,
later.
yeah, 3 months
Three
later.
months later. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I got at university. I was masking, but because you spend the entire day at the university and you eat, you drink, obviously you're not masked the entire time. And I was being as careful as I could, but you can't go out into normal society where no one else masks and then take off your mask and be safe to drink some water or eat your lunch or something.
Hmm.
Um, so that was my third infection. And then I had a long break from COVID, as far as I know of. And then last summer, so in August 2023, I got my fourth infection 2 days before my birthday.
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
really unfortunate birthday gift. I'm very sorry.
yeah, yeah. That was actually a really mild infection compared to all the other ones I had so far. And that's when I went down the real road of long COVID.
Were there a lot of people masking still at that time in 2022?
No one at all. The mask mandate ended in 2021. So obviously no one was masking because you didn't have to. And I was the only person trying to protect myself. And when no one else masks around you, even
Hmm.
your mask stops functioning as much as it should because there's so much virus and bacteria floating all around you.
Right.
So
And
yeah.
you're kind of assured that everything is fine, that you're
Yeah.
safe. And so I'm sure people would have masked if they knew what you know now.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
So when you got ill with these 4 infections, were you prescribed any medications like antivirals?
No. I wasn't actually even aware that there's antivirals for long or for COVID in general. None of my doctors ever spoke about it at all.
And it's just not a thing in Switzerland that you take a medicine when you get COVID. Is that
No.
right? Okay. So
Yeah.
you were 16 when you had
Yep.
your first infection. So you had it at 16,
Yeah.
17, 18. Well, you had from
I
16
was,
to 19, you had four
yeah,
infections and then you turned 20.
yeah. When you're so young, you don't take a pandemic as seriously, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I did take it more seriously than people around me because of my pre-existing condition, because of my heart disease. I was kind of scared of like what it could do to my heart. So that was like the main reason why I was so careful, not because of the fear of getting long COVID, because to me that was just something that like elderly people get because there was just so much
Mm-hmm.
misinformation.
Mm-hmm. You were doing what you were instructed to do. Like if you have a pre-existing condition, then you need to still be careful, wear a mask. But that really didn't save you from new problems. When did your long COVID situation start?
That's a question that's really hard to answer. So my long COVID situation officially started after my last infection, which was August 2023, because that's when my symptoms became so debilitating to the point that I had to drop out of university. I kind of only lived in bed for like months afterwards. That's where my doctors say my long COVID started. But based on the things I've read, I do believe that my long COVID started in 2022. After my infection in July, I experienced very severe fatigue. I felt very weak. I had migraines and headaches. And I don't know if those were just like the post-acute COVID time of like 3 to 4 months where many people experience such symptoms, because right after I was hit with another COVID infection that that I barely even made a full recovery from. My lungs hurt for like months after the infection resolved. I had extreme fatigue and brain fog, and I was constantly getting other colds and fevers. Like every few weeks, I would have a cold or fever that would last for a few weeks. And I would go to my doctors and talk to them about it, and no one had any idea of what was going on. Um, so that to me, based on what I've heard and what I've read, does sound a bit like the more untypical COVID long COVID symptoms, but no one pointed it out at that time, and I just didn't think about it myself either.
Hmm. It was only the fourth infection
Yeah.
that you put the two and two together, or did a doctor put that together for you?
I actually did not put it together for a really long time. After my last infection, I had really bad heart palpitations. My heart would race from like the tiniest movement. I could barely sit. I could barely eat. I couldn't do anything anymore, basically. I was not
Hmm.
functioning as a person, mostly because of extreme tachycardia and heart palpitations. So my first thought was, well, COVID has made my heart defect worse. So I contacted, my cardiologist and I got an appointment. And then they did a load of tests and they were like, your heart is healthy. There is like nothing wrong with your heart except for the pre-existing condition. So
Oh,
I was
yay.
exactly, that was like very calming to know that my heart defect hadn't, become worse through COVID. But there was
Mhm.
nothing that explained my symptoms. So at the same day, I went to my GP and I was like, I need you to like write me a note because I need to be put on sick leave because the semester was about to start. And I thought that it would just take a couple of weeks or a month or two for me to recover from this. And
Mhm.
the same day, he diagnosed me with POTS, which for those of
Oh,
you who don't know is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It's a form of dysautonomia. And it basically, well, the very short explanation is when you sit up or stand up, your heart starts to palpitate or like race because your blood vessels don't contract the way they should. And then all your blood just kind of like sinks down to your lower extremities. It does more than that, but that's the very basic general explanation.
hmm.
Um, and I was diagnosed with that. I was given medications and I was sent home with sick leave. But the
Hmm.
more the time passed, the more it became obvious that there was something wrong with me because, most people who experience post-viral POTS, their POTS does resolve within a couple of months. And 3 months passed and I wasn't doing better. So my GP at some point told me, okay, this looks like something more serious. And he did a whole load of research and he signed me up for a long COVID consultation in my hospital. And I got an appointment in November where I was diagnosed with POTS again. Um, I was also diagnosed with long COVID, and I was diagnosed with a couple other things with fatigue. I was diagnosed with, I have to remember what I was diagnosed with. I was
Brain
diagnosed with
fog.
fatigue, brain fog, exactly, cognitive deficits, exercise intolerance, post-exertional malaise, and a couple other things. Basically, all the typical long COVID diagnoses that you expect someone
Yeah.
to get.
I think it's amazing that your GP like was so proactive. I know there's a lot of stories that I've been
Yeah.
reading from folks that they go to their GP and they're kind of told the same thing you are, that, oh, well, it'll resolve in a couple months. I was told that. So your experience is it's exceptional in that you had a really great GP to lead you through that and recognize early in terms of what other people's
Yeah.
experiences comparatively.
A lot of the symptoms that I had at the beginning were the typical POT symptoms that everyone kind of talks or knows about, which is like tachycardia, heart palpitations, fatigue, and all that. And that got better through time. The more I learned to listen to my body, the more I was able to avoid severe tachycardia. I don't feel like I've actually made any recovery. If I would go back to doing the things I was doing pre-diagnosis, I would have the same bad symptoms. I just because of through occupational therapy and medications, I've learned to manage my symptoms. Some things have gotten worse, though. At the beginning, I had only very mild GI symptoms, and now they're pretty much unbearable. I'm currently in the process of being diagnosed what it is because I've done a couple tests and everything so far has been negative. Um, that got worse really quickly around Christmas. All of a sudden, I was barely able to eat
Mhm.
anymore. And then it got better for a week or two when I basically stopped eating anything at all. And then the more I tried to go back to a normal diet, the worse my symptoms got again. So now I'm on an adjusted diet, trying to avoid having severe like stomach aches or severe bloating, but it's rather hard to manage if you have no idea what's causing those symptoms, really.
That sounds terrible. What is your adjusted diet now?
So the first things, well, I'm vegan for starters, but the first things I kind of noticed really early on is that I do not tolerate anything that is hot, meaning I cannot eat a hot meal because that causes severe tachycardia. And I feel like that also just makes my, like, when I have tachycardia and I feel really fatigued, I feel like my digestive system just stops working all in all. So that was one of the first things I noticed. Then I realized I can only really eat some foods that are kind of like easy to digest, so like vegetables and fruits. But then I realized that that causes a lot of bloating. So I went to a basically a lot of cooked vegetables diet, which I actually tolerated really well. But whilst I was only eating vegetables all day, I wasn't getting enough calories. I was probably eating around 400 to 500 calories a day. So I lost a lot of weight really, really quickly. And that was kind of like the red flag of like, okay, I need to eat more. I need to eat properly. So I tried to add more things to my diet. And right now I kind of have a diet of I avoid carbs, I avoid sugars, I avoid starches, especially like carbs I can have like some fruits. If I make sure that I add peanut butter, for example, so that's like a complex carb, but like especially starches and sugars and chocolate, that's like a big no-go. I avoid
So
gluten.
sad.
Yeah. I also avoid anything that's highly processed. So I might mainly still eat vegetables, but I also eat a lot of like softer foods that are easier to digest.
Was this all stuff that you were kind of figuring out on your own, or were you led by any medical practitioners? This, I see
No
you shaking your
medical.
head.
No,
Nope, this was all me.
no, no. Actually, it was all the people in the Discord. I wasn't even aware of that my diet. Well, I was aware that my diet affected my GI symptoms, but I wasn't aware that my diet could affect, things like tachycardia, fatigue, and all that. So it was like people like Kali who were like, "Hey, have you tried no histamine? Have you tried this? Have you tried that?" And through trial and error, I kind of figured out which diets worked for me. I went no histamine
Mm.
for a month. Then I went no, did the FODMAP diet for a couple of weeks. I tried keto for a week. I tried I tried eating meat again. Then I realized I do not digest meat at all, so I stopped eating meat again. I really tried pretty much everything, and none of these classic diets of like avoid foods from this group helped me in any
Yeah.
way. Because I was struggling to get the my right amount of calories in. So I just decided I'm going to do my own thing. And as long as I feel good whilst I'm doing it, then that's the most important
Yeah.
thing.
Learning to listen to your body and trial and error, and you are the master of your own destiny.
Definitely. I mean, I didn't even consider nutrition until around Christmas when I was eating like all these, typical Christmas meals, like a lot of cookies and a lot of like
Mm.
cake and
Happy
gingerbread and all
food.
kinds of stuff. Exactly. And I felt
Hmm.
horrible the entire time. And I joined the Discord and I was like, what's going on? And I was like advised to like try different things. And I I wouldn't have felt comfortable going to my GP and be like, so this random person on a Discord told me to go no histamine, so I'm
The
gonna go no
internet
histamine
told
now.
me to do this diet, so.
Exactly. So I did it and I tried multiple things. But at the end of the day, nothing really helped me. But I do have a wonderful GP. I just do want to say that he does help me whenever he can. And I do come into like his office and be like, so I read this study about this and that, and I don't understand what I'm supposed to do with this information. And then he'll read the study, explain everything to me, and then he'll tell me, so these are the things you could try to implement in your everyday life. So for example, I read a study about like insulin in people with POTS that basically their body has a bad insulin reaction to like foods that are high in glucose. And he told me, well, have you tried a diet that is low in glucose or only has like more complex glucose and stuff like that? And we read the study together and he gave me that idea. So I did try that out and I realized, whoa, I can actually eat fruit as long as I add things like peanut butter or mix it with my yogurt that's
Mhm.
also high in protein and high in fibers. And that's when I realized that what my issue is not the thing itself, it's not the sugar itself, it's the way my body reacts to like high amounts of sugar. And if it has
Mhm.
other stuff that it has to break down with it at the same time, I can actually eat these things. So that was definitely very helpful, but I would have never have thought to like play around with my diet if it wouldn't have been for the people on the Discord advising me different things. Yeah,
Mhm. It takes a village, man. It's
it does.
it's a lot. Your GP, is he taking like new patients? Does he take American patients? But
He does speak fluent English, so
woohoo. This reminds me of my conversation with Rush in our last episode of like, yet again, so many of us are reading these studies and just we're desperate to find some missing piece or some direction that will provide relief from this ongoing just hell. And you have to do that at a much younger age than a lot of us. You're 20 years old and you're having to read these studies, going to your doctor, asking about them. That's not what I did when I was 20. You're pretty exceptional, Emerson. I think you're
oh,
pretty
thank you.
great. And to be able to navigate these constant, just like the pain and the chronic pain, the chronic fatigue, the chronic illness, and then having to navigate medical systems and just it's so much work to just be a person, to eat, to sleep, to walk. Can you talk a little bit about when your POTS has been really bad? What is your day like?
When I have a bad POTS day, things like just sitting up, um, I are impossible. I'll just be sitting on the sofa trying to watch a movie, and not only will I not be able to focus on the movie at all because my brain fog is so bad severe, but because also my heart is pounding. You can really like feel my heart racing in my chest. I'll have like a heart rate of 130 just sitting. I won't be able to have a conversation because talking makes my heart spike. I will have like a heart rate of like 180 when I'm just talking to someone. Following a dialogue is impossible, so I won't be able to do what we're doing now. Um,
Mhm.
so I'll just spend the entire day in bed, basically lying down, trying to survive as best as I can.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like when I was younger, when I thought, oh, I'm ill, I can stay home and watch movies all day. And at the beginning, I thought, oh, that's what my life is going to be until I recover. I'll just be at home all day and I'll be able to knit and watch movies and like catch up on like podcasts and all that. And that's like definitely not the case. Most of the time, I am too tired or too weak to watch a movie, to watch a series, to knit, to crochet, to do anything that I like to do. I'm not able to bake because standing is too exhausting. Mixing a dough is like, that's a workout for me. That's like
Hmm.
running a marathon. And when I have
Yeah.
a really bad POTS day, just like basic things like sitting up, walking the 10 meters to go to the bathroom, those are things that become chores that are impossible for me to do.
And do you have to rely on other people or mobility aids?
Yeah, I have a really great support system. My family has been amazing during this time. They cook for me, they help me shower, they will help me wash my hair. They bring me my
Mhm.
toothbrush in the evening when I'm not able to get up anymore. So like I have like
Aw,
people who really help me and care about me, and I'm just so thankful that I have them because alone this would not be manageable. With
yeah.
medication, I have been able to avoid really bad crashes or like really bad POTS flare days. That they've become more rare, and when I do have them, they're not as severe as they used to be. I also wear compression garments that are like really tight. The people at the pharmacy always look at me really weirdly when I come and buy them because like those are like the kinds that people get when they have cancer or like some kind of like or like are elderly, and I'm just like a 20-year-old being like, "Hi, I would like to have these medical grade compression garments, please."
Yeah, compression
Yeah.
garments are where it's at for pots. And I remember looking for them during my pots journey, and I found the cutest designs. I was really happy to see that this
Yeah.
really like stupid thing that I have to do has there are some really cute ones out there.
There
Um,
are, yeah. Yeah.
so it's not, I mean, at least you can do it in style, right? Just kidding. You have to do all these extra things that someone at 20 that's been promised, oh, you're young and you'll recover and you're vaccinated or whatever, that someone your age shouldn't have to do.
I had a lot of like my youth taken away throughout the lockdown and the pandemic. I wasn't able to see my friends properly during my last year of school. I started university and I didn't really wasn't able to see most of my friends then either because I was being careful and all that. And part of me was like looking forward to just being able to, go to the bar and like drink without worrying and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that when right when I started feeling more comfortable and being like, okay, I can do things again. I can see my friends without being like terrified all the time. And then I got long COVID and like I was like now I'm losing my 20s as well. I
Lost your
basically now I'm
teens.
yeah, now I'm losing
Yeah.
my 20s and you really just don't know how long this will last for. And even if I do recover eventually and am able to go back to uni and go back to meeting my friends, I'll constantly have to be careful not to get COVID again because even a mild reinfection could make my symptoms so much worse again. And when you've experienced the worst, basically, you do not want to go there ever again. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Amen to that. Like the fear of reinfection is so different for someone who's been through long COVID than it is for just the regular person. Like you hear a lot of people say that, oh, I got it, it wasn't that bad. If you went through the hell of what you just described, of I can't get up to brush my teeth, I don't have the freedom in my body to move about even in my house. I can't take care of myself. I can't do the things that I enjoy. What is life then?
Yeah.
And you have to deal with that at such a young age. Do you want to talk a little bit about your journey on in the mental health side of this?
Experiencing this was like really confusing and like terrifying. I tested negative and then the same day I decided I was going to meet a friend again. And I went and met my friend and it was really hot outside. It was like 35 degrees. So I obviously felt like all the first signs of the POT symptoms, the tachycardia, feeling dizzy, all these issues that I was experiencing. I thought that was just because of the extreme heat and maybe not having fully recovered from COVID, even though my test was negative. And I got home, and even hours after I had gotten home, my resting heart rate was about 120, which was the first time I realized something is wrong. And then, like, I kept on trying to understand, like, days afterwards, I kept on trying to understand what was going on. Eventually, I went to my GP, and he told me that COVID can have lingering symptoms even after you test negative. And because my ECG came back normal, I shouldn't be too concerned. And of course, that was like 2 or 3 weeks after my like after my positive test, so no one was thinking much of it. But then
Mhm.
months passed and I was still struggling to do basic things. So that's when I decided to contact the cardiologist and I did a whole load of tests just to rule out that my heart defect hadn't gotten worse. And luckily everything remained the same, everything was stable, everything was fine. And that was just for them, they didn't think about sending me to another specialist to figure out what was going on. They didn't consider the possibility of POTS. I actually asked, could I have POTS? And they were like, oh no, don't expect the worst. So
Don't
that I
expect the worst.
I mean, I got diagnosed with POTS the exact same day from my GP. So it was like
Ugh,
kind of like really cardiologists. But that was that. And then
I didn't know that medicine was based on optimism. Like, sorry,
it's
your
so,
body, your
yeah.
body decides based on your attitude how sick it is.
Yeah. And like all this not knowing was definitely terrifying. I did find out 2 months after I started experiencing these symptoms that I had POTS. But all this time, I was Googling my symptoms and trying to figure everything out, and I kept on ending up on POTS. So it was kind of like, it sounds like I have this. And a lot of these things I was reading were like about POTS and long COVID, and I just didn't consider that at all. So I was advised to try and do sports, try to do yoga, try to go on walks. And when I started doing that, afterwards I
Reconditioning.
would,
Yeah.
yeah, I started having these really severe crashes, or what we call PEM crashes, so post-exertional malaise crashes. And those were the most terrifying and horrific things I've ever experienced. It literally felt like I was dying. I was not able to think. My brain was just kind of like mushy. Nothing was working. I wasn't able to move. I felt paralyzed. My whole body hurt. I was
You're just like
tachycardic
too
while,
fatigued to move. Like you
yeah,
couldn't like,
I was too tired to move. I knew that moving would physically and also like physically hurt me and also
hmm
mentally drain me even more. But also my brain wasn't probably able to communicate with my body what it was supposed to do. My heart rate whilst lying down was also extremely high. I had
hmm
extreme palpitations. Just everything felt horrible. And I like it was like literally felt like I was dying. And I would tell doctors that I was experiencing this, and they did empathize with me, but they couldn't tell me what was going on. And
hmm
eventually my GP told me, well, if that's what happens after you try to go on a 10-minute walk, then maybe you shouldn't be trying to recondition yourself and you should just be resting. So I stopped doing that. The crashes stopped happening, and my mental health also, became more stable, because when you have such a severe crash that lasts for 2 weeks after you go on a like 10-minute walk, obviously your mental state is horrible. You feel like you're dying. You have no idea.
A
I
10
would
minute
have
walk can ruin you for 2 weeks.
it was horrible. And just my
Yeah.
biggest issue was not knowing. As soon as I saw a neurologist in November who was like, "Oh yeah, you have fatigue and you have post-exertional malaise. Of course you're experiencing this. Definitely do not do any kind of sports." And all of a sudden, like, I understood that these were like crashes. I understood they weren't actually harmful except for just being really uncomfortable and like can set you back by a couple weeks or months. And all of a sudden, like, the entire anxiety just faded away. But not
hmm
knowing what's happening to you and experiencing that was the worst thing I've ever like, it's the worst thing ever. And
Yeah.
no, and you talk to doctors and they can't tell you, and you're just like so frustrated and you feel so abandoned and alone, and you're just like, can someone
Yes.
just tell me I'm not dying, please?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This reminds me so much of the conversation with Rush again, because, he said that when he put the pieces together,
Yeah.
like just knowing what's wrong with you, just knowing a diagnosis, helps you to be able to at least put to rest some of these crazy thoughts you have that are like, oh, I'm dying, or oh, I'm
Yeah.
whatever, but also like a plan of attack perhaps for management and figuring out how to get some of your functionality back.
Yeah. Before I had the long COVID diagnosis, my GP was trying to like rule out anything else. He was like testing me for all kinds of like chronic illnesses, and all of the tests came back negative. And I kept on being frustrated that I wasn't being diagnosed with anything. And like my friends were like, "Aren't you glad you don't have this debilitating chronic illness?" And I'm like, "I just want to know what's going on. I just
hmm
want answers. I want treatment options. I don't even care if there's good treatment options. I just want to know that what I have isn't killing me, that what I have isn't like the death of, like, you just
Yeah.
want to put a label to what you're experiencing, because going to doctors repeatedly and being like, I experience these crashes, and during a crash I have all these 3,000 symptoms that make me feel like I'm dying, and I think I'm
Yeah.
losing my mind, and I don't know what's happening. And they just look at you like you're crazy. But if you're like, okay, I experience post-exertional malaise crashes, they'll be like, okay, yeah, you have that makes sense totally. And they don't ask about like all the specific symptoms. And you just kind
hmm
of want to have that peace of mind and be like, okay, I've got this, that's it. Doesn't matter if I can treat it. I just know what I have.
Yeah. I think another important part of that is knowing that the symptoms are kind of consequences of the post-exertional malaise. So, like going to a doctor and saying, I get tachycardia when I'm in a post-exertional malaise episode. You can't just go to a cardiologist and be like, evaluate my tachycardia. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
in a vacuum, those symptoms, they're just not very treatable. A lot of folks are shipped off to these different specialists to treat these sort of consequence symptoms instead of looking at it as this systemic problem, like, oh, this PEM, post-exertional malaise,
Hmm.
PEM, is sort of the antecedent or the cause. I don't even know if I can say it's a cause, but
Yeah.
because I've spent time going to different specialists to evaluate all these 3,000 symptoms, and it doesn't really get you anywhere because they just pop up again the next time you have a PEM. So,
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, also I did a 3-day Holter ECG thing, and just to like rule out that that I had like a normal rhythm, and they did find that I have both bradycardia and tachycardia, and but they told me that my tachycardia wasn't anything that was extreme, but the biggest issue was that they did it whilst I was not having an active crash. And I do have
mhm.
tachycardia, but my tachycardia on a normal day, if I like try to cook or like I don't know, just don't just spend the entire day in
Yeah,
bed or on the sofa, will only go up to like 160 to 170, which in itself is high considering that I do nothing that's exhausting. Or like for a healthy person isn't anything exhausting. For me, it's very exhausting. But like during a crash, my resting heart rate is over 100. And that's something that is very concerning. That's very abnormal. But you just can't plan a medical test around a crash because for me, my
yeah,
crashes, they don't come right after. That would be wonderful if they come a couple days after. So you're just like trying to plan a
yeah,
crash to be at the same time as like an ECG. It just doesn't work for me. Like, either I'll be crashing the
yeah.
day after or the day before, and it's just like, yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, I've seen a lot of this too with other long COVID patients that, doctors will say, plan your test whenever you're feeling badly. And it's like, I'm sorry, how am I supposed to?
Yeah.
I'm always feeling badly, but I might have it at different times. But also, like, you don't really have the freedom to say, okay, I'm feeling badly, so tomorrow. It's like, no, you have to schedule this test for this discrete time in the future that maybe you'll feel great that day, maybe you won't. And then at the end of it, if it was a normal-ish day, not that we really
Yeah.
have normal days, but not a terrible day, and they just come back and say your symptoms, or sorry, your test results are normal, it is the worst feeling mental health wise. It's like, oh my God, I just went through all of that. I waited for that appointment. I waited for that test. I was hoping it would show something. And I didn't have, the stars didn't align that I had a crash at that exact time
Yeah.
that would have showed up on a test. And then you're back at
Yeah.
square one. And so, the testing that we have available to us in our medical system doesn't seem to meet the need for the symptoms that we're having. So talking a little bit more about your triggers, we did talk about nutrition-based triggers and exercising, but anything else that triggers these flares for you?
Pretty basic things can cause a flare. So the other day I was washing my face, which I haven't done in months because it's exhausting. And I thought I might actually just like follow up on hygiene. And I had a heart rate of 160 whilst just standing over the sink and like massaging soap on my face. That is something that just for some reason moving my arms like over my shoulder, like also like brushing my hair cause a flare. So those are things that I really, really struggle with and do need help with. I am not able to shower properly. I have like a stool that I sit on. The biggest issue is that I can't wear my compression garments whilst I'm sitting in the shower. I cannot do
Hmm.
anything without my compression garments. There are some people who only wear compression garments on like a bad day or during a flare or something, but because I have neuropathic POTS, that means that I have to wear my compression garments as soon as I get out of bed until I go back to bed at night. So that's kind of not wearing my compression garments. That's a massive trigger for me, and it doesn't really matter what I'm doing without them. As soon as I'm like in like an upright position without them, nothing works anymore. Of course, no
Hmm.
warmer temperatures. That's also a massive issue for me.
Oh, and
Um,
here we are going into summer soon.
Exactly. Um, I cannot
Uh,
tolerate any temperatures over 20 degrees Celsius. because my dysautonomia means that I have no more temperature regulation, and I do not sweat anywhere except for my hands, and my hands sweat excessively all the time. That means that as soon as it gets warmer, my body just overheats. And that also makes my blood vessels widen even more. And since that's already like a general issue with POTS, that just leads into a tire flare with bad tachycardia. And trying to do anything in a warmer temperature will mean that I have a crash
Mhm.
pretty quickly after that.
So let's talk about how you manage your symptoms. Now that you understand more of your health problems, that you understand your condition, what are the therapies or tips and tricks, medications that you live by?
So the most helpful thing for me for sure has been occupational therapy for pacing. I also take medications. I've like when I was diagnosed like 1 or 2 months after I started having these POTS symptoms, I was given midodrine, which has been really, really helpful. Um, then a couple months ago, I was given fludrocortisone, which has a lot of side effects. I'm not exactly happy about taking it, but it seems to do something for me, so I'm just taking it with a lot of caution. I was also recommended to start doing physical therapy, but I haven't started it yet because I'm not sure if the physical therapy I was told to do is like the reconditioning aspect of you should try to exercise and do a lot, or if it's more like the kind of physical therapy that's generally recommended for long COVID, which is more like awareness and mindfulness and meditation and stuff like that. And I've
Mhm.
just been too scared to try that out so far. So I've only been
Mhm.
doing occupational therapy and medication.
Can you talk a little bit more about what pacing is for you?
Yeah, so pacing is just about basically managing your energy levels so that you do not use up all your energy at once. One of the main issues that people with long COVID have is that they have much lower energy levels than that they used to have. And getting used to that is like really, really difficult because, things like just getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, having breakfast, that for me is exhausting. That's like in the past, I would just do that so quickly that I would use up all my energy for the entire day before I even finished breakfast. Now, with pacing, I know not to do that. So it basically means that you have to learn to listen to your body to have like a rough idea of what your energy levels are on that day. So in general, the first thing that you learn, or the first thing I learned, I can only speak from my personal experiences, are that you have to recognize early signs of you overworking yourself. And those can be different for everyone and also like depend on what kind of activity you're doing. So if it's more of a cognitive kind of activity or more physical, social, emotional, those are like kind of the four main categories. For me, those are, for example, things like heart palpitations, dizziness, brain fog, having difficulties finding the right words, and things like that. And once you start experiencing those symptoms, that means you have to drop what you're doing like right now and go and rest. And you
Oh,
need to
that is
figure
so
out
hard.
it
Drop what
is
you're
so
doing
hard.
right now,
Yeah. But it's
or
so
else.
important.
Yeah.
And you have to go and rest immediately. And there's different things that can help you kind of recover and regain more energy. For me, that's sleeping, meditation, or relaxation
Hmm.
exercises. And kind of once you learn how to do that, you can start doing the more advanced version, basically. And that's where you stop what you're doing before you start experiencing those symptoms. So you kind of have to learn how much energy and activity uses up and then stop before you've used up all your energy and rest so that later on you can go back and pick it up again. Because once you start experiencing those symptoms, you've already gone too far.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
So
once
rest
you
before you are tired. Yeah.
exactly. That is so hard. It took me 6 months to learn that, and it's been crucial though. And then pretty much once you learn how to do that, you can actually start increasing your energy levels, and that's super hard and super difficult. But it's great to start adding things to your normal day-to-day life. So for me, for example, I was able to do a 1-minute train ride a couple weeks ago, and I haven't been in public transport since I got long
Amazing.
COVID. So that was like really, really big for me. And that's something that I've been doing together with my occupational therapist. So we've been discussing what is possible for me to add to my everyday life and what would be important for me to be able to do. And it's really important that whilst you do that, you're really careful, you listen to your body, you take as many breaks as possible. And pretty much for me, we like chose a goal that what I would want to be able to do in a couple months. And I said I wanted to be able to see my friends in a cafe and take public transport to see them. So we kind of broke that entire thing of like you get into the train, you get out of the train, you're in the
Mhm.
cafe, you go home again into like small parts, like every tiny things. Like first you get dressed, you put on your shoes, you leave the house, you walk to the bus stop, you take the bus, you walk to the train, you get in the train, you sit in the train, you get out, like every tiny part. And like
Yeah.
every tiny part is something I have to practice singularly. So I practice getting dressed and then I get undressed again. I practice walking to the bus station and then I take a break and I walk home again. I practice taking the bus. I practice and now I'm like slow because the train ride to the city is quite long. Well, it's 20 minutes, but I'm like doing just
Yeah.
like one stop after the other, basically. Um,
Right.
and that is like super important because doing a whole activity is something that's not achievable for most people. And it's really depressing to do something that's fun and great and then having to stop or mid in the middle of it or going home and like knowing, shoot,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a massive crash tomorrow. And like it is hard to like do things in tiny small steps, but you also feel great about yourself to be like, oh yay, I took the train. It was just 1 minute, but like I'm not gonna have a crash
Yeah.
tomorrow. That's amazing. And like that's just
Yeah.
like the
The
small things.
empowerment.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
feel so powerful when you're sitting in that train being like, this is the first time I've been in a train for 8 months and I'm not going to have a crash tomorrow. I am the best out of everyone here.
Yes, if everyone knew just how much of a chore this has been. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
amazing. And those little wins are so important
Yeah.
for your mental health. Because it takes mental, physical, emotional, all of it to recover. Breaking it up into those small steps is really great. I think that at least on my side of the world, where we tend to overwork here in the States,
Oh, here
um,
too.
it's contagious. I'm sorry. But you're so used to kind of pushing through a lot of times to for some goal. And it's
Yeah.
very goal oriented. And I love that you said that your goal was your goal was to do a thing and not have a crash afterwards. It wasn't just to accomplish a thing. It was to prioritize your health in addition to that. So that's really key for me is like, okay, I could do this thing, but it's going to ruin the rest of the week, or it's going to ruin, the rest of the day at least. Um, that's a totally new way of thinking from before long COVID.
Like, I mean, in the past, I mean, I'm pretty sure I can speak for everyone here. Like, we just use up our body, we use up all our energy and do things without thinking about the repercussions that could come up with that. We just like do, and we don't think about consequences and stuff.
There
And
weren't consequences before.
exactly. I mean, you might just feel like tired for a day because you slept 2 hours. But like, there's nothing bad that's gonna
Yeah.
happen, really. But now, like, the implications of not taking care of yourself are massive. And I could never imagine just like going back to mindlessly doing things just because I can, just because I was told to do it. Like, why would I want to use my body in such a toxic and like unhealthy way?
Yeah. But on the other hand, too, it's like there
I want to
you
do
want to
things.
exactly like you want to have a body that can handle
Yeah,
a day-to-day life that is
yeah, definitely.
dependable. All right, so can you talk a little bit about your experience with the medical system there in Switzerland?
So in Switzerland, generally, there's like different kind of systems depending on your insurance, but the general system is that when you have something that your GP cannot treat, your GP will refer you to a specialist, generally in a hospital, and then that hospital will decide what to do with you, and they will refer you to further doctors. So it's pretty much impossible to get an appointment with a specialist without a referral, either from another specialist or from your GP. And that's pretty much what happened for me. My GP referred me to a long COVID consultation, and there I saw a neurologist who spent an hour kind of talking to me about my symptoms, about my fatigue. I had to like fill out 20 questionnaires about my fatigue and mental state and all kinds of things. And then I had to do a standing test to re-diagnose me with POTS. I had to do a couple of tests to figure out if I had like cognitive deficits, which I do. And then that was kind of the entire appointment. At the end of the appointment, he referred me to a specialist for the autonomic nervous system. And that was kind of the most important thing for me because at that point, when I saw the neurologist, I already knew that I had some form of long COVID and that most of my symptoms were fatigue and POTS related. I had my appointment with the autonomic nervous system specialist in January. And I have to point out that my mom called the hospital like 3,000 times, begging them for an earlier appointment because the appointment was supposed to be in, I think, April. So I wouldn't even
Mhm.
have seen the specialist by now. The,
Wow.
yeah, that's the waiting lists are long because they're just overrun with patients. They have no idea what to do with all of us, and a lot of the clinics are actually shutting down because they're just overrun with patients and they don't have the right funding. Um,
Mm.
so I was really lucky that my mom was constantly calling the hospital and just like annoying them until they gave us earlier appointments because even my appointment with the neurologist that I had in November was supposed to be in January. So
Yeah.
and I didn't have the energy myself to constantly call them and be like, I need this, I need that. So I was really glad that my mom took care of that for me. Because
She's probably
otherwise,
happy too, as
yeah.
like your mom is
Yeah.
just like mama
Yeah.
bearing, and
Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
we all need our mama bears.
Definitely. Yeah. So then I had my appointments and these long COVID, well, not, the long COVID specialist I saw was amazing, but the specialist that I saw for my POTS was well, a character to say the least. Well, I did a tilt-table test with him, but he wasn't there throughout the test. It was his assistant who did the test with me. And at the end of the test, where they kind of like put you up at like 60 degrees to see if you'll pass out. And um, well, I nearly passed out, so they had to te end the test early. And he came in, and the first thing that he told me was that he was angry that he wasn't, that I had nearly passed out and that the test had to be ended early because then he wasn't able to see me whilst I was still standing or like in that 60 degrees position during the test.
Wait, wait, he was angry that
Yeah.
your test results showed results?
He was angry that I was so disabled or like had such severe POTS that I nearly passed out or informed his
And that
assistant that
is
I was about to
all
pass
your
out.
fault,
It was my
Emerson.
yeah, because
You didn't consider
he
his feelings.
he didn't make it to the treatment room in time to see me nearly pass out, and that was what he was angry about.
Sounds like
Um,
a him problem.
that was the first red flag, and then things kind of just went weird from there on. I spoke to him about my crashes, and he was like, "Oh no, crashes don't exist. They're just like a hype of the long COVID community, and that's just like because you're dehydrated." And I was like, "I drink 5 liters of water a day. How the hell am I dehydrated?" I'm still being treated by him because I tried to my GP referred me to another hospital, but they told me that because I have a POTS diagnosis, I should remain with him because like he's the only person in the entire country of Switzerland that treats POTS and is like a specialist in
What?
that. So
Ugh.
I was not able to see a different specialist.
The way that he's treated you when you're in this vulnerable position in a test, you've basically nearly passed out, and he tells you that you're hyping it up. Like, that
He
is so inappropriate.
He was angry about like a whole lot of things that I just didn't understand. At first, he was like angry that I was well educated about POTS and dysautonomia. And I just didn't
Mm.
understand that because like usually doctors do want you to be educated. And he had this massive issue that he wasn't like the savior, like God coming down and telling me, you have POTS and this is what you have to do. So you have to wear compression garments. I'm like,
You're
yeah, I already
supposed to
know that.
grovel, Emerson.
He was like, I got diagnosed again by him in the tilt table test end of January. I got my first diagnosis for POTS early September. So I already
Uh,
was doing all the things that I was able to do. I already had medications
yeah.
for POTS. I was doing all these like home remedy things of like compression garments, avoiding hot temperatures, drinking enough, avoiding carbs, avoiding sugar. Like I was already doing everything. There was nothing he told me about my illness that I didn't
Mm.
already know. And he was really upset about that. And I didn't wasn't there being like, "Oh yeah, I know everything. I'm better than you," or like I'm like a doctor too. I wasn't sitting there being like I'm like a know-it-all. I just sat there and was like, "Yeah,
You're a good
I already do
student.
that. I already do that.
Yeah.
I already do that." And he was angry that he wasn't able to like help me, I think. But instead of being like, oh yeah, you know so much, there's nothing I can do to help you anymore. He was like, you have to stop Googling and you have to stop reading on the internet and you shouldn't be talking to people with long COVID because they'll just give you this false idea that you have long COVID, but you actually just have post-viral POTS. And I was just like sitting there like, isn't post-viral POTS after COVID also long COVID? Um,
Oh my God. Ugh.
that first appointment with him was an experience.
Oh, I'm
I
so
was
sorry.
I had
Oh,
nightmares after that for a
of
while. It
course.
haunted
Yeah.
me in my sleep. And
I'm
um
laughing, but like nervously, like because I know I know
it's
what that's like.
I
It's
think we
terrible.
called we actually called like right after that appointment too. Like you were like the person I was venting to about it.
I was ready because I had my own stories that I know what it's like, and I was like, ugh,
Yeah.
I get so upset that it happens to so many people, and it's you were very polite in the way that you described it, that he was a character, and this personality problem seems to be getting in the way of real treatment. Maybe, like you
Yeah.
said, he didn't really have anything to offer you because you're already doing everything. But in that case,
It's
the
the way you
answer is
say, it's the way you say, oh, you're
right.
already doing everything. There's really nothing else you can
Right.
do.
Right. You
To
prepare, like, be nice to
Yeah,
me.
like
I'm suffering, instead of, well, it's all,
yeah.
you're just hyping yourself up. I didn't know that, getting passing out nearly and crashing was something that someone could put into my head from the internet.
Whilst I was there the entire time, he kept on telling me that I wasn't actually sick, that I was just deconditioned, and if I would actually exercise, I would be healthy. And I just sat there and I was like, I was trying not to cry.
Yeah.
I was like physically in a bad state because my body had just been like brought to its limits. I was mentally
Hmm.
exhausted because I hadn't eaten. It was like 1 p.m. I hadn't had anything to eat. I hadn't had anything to drink. I hadn't taken my meds yet. I was like really not in a good place. And I was like all the last energy I had just went into not crying in front of him because I knew that if I would
Hmm.
cry or show any kind of vulnerability, he would just
Yeah.
tell me that I'm mentally ill and not like physically ill. And
Hmm.
I remember when I got the letter from the hospital with the reports, and I was like, oh shit, now I'm gonna have like all be gaslighting all over again. And his reports literally diagnosed me with neuropathic POTS and another form of dysautonomia. And I just sat there crying in relief of like, I'm actually sick. It's not all in my head. It's not all the conditioning. I was like,
Yeah.
yes, he does
Wow.
believe me. And I
It's
was
like
just glad. Part of me was like glad that he did recognize that I was ill because
you need to keep being treated, and you're
yeah.
hoping that the person that you unfortunately have to keep seeing, it takes you seriously.
And
But
and then I had another appointment with him to do like a test to like basically prove that I do have dysautonomia, which was a test where they would heat up my body with 42 degrees Celsius. And
oh, that's torture.
yeah. Without any meds or medicate like without any medication or water or like anything. And I had to lay on that table completely naked. And there was like I'm claustrophobic and there were like a bunch of heat lamps over my head. And not only are you like extremely vulnerable in that state because you're
Mm.
naked and like covered by like a hot blanket brought to your physical limits again. Um, he came into the room and like told me off for not like following his medication advice to the T because it didn't work for me. I
Hmm.
got really ill from the medication he was putting me on. Just things weren't working out. And I had discussed it with my GP. I wasn't just like just changing things myself. I went to a doctor and was advised by my GP to do what worked best for me. I remember just like lying there in this vulnerable state. I was in a situate position where I couldn't just get up and like move. Um,
Hmm.
and
And someone is like attacking you verbally,
yeah,
and
and all my energy once again went into not crying during that test. And
yeah.
I was at my limit and they had to end the test early because I lost my shit basically. I could not handle the
Hmm.
test. I was being yelled at all the time. They had to end the test early because he was verbally abusing
Yeah.
me, not because I was too ill to finish the test. He came to me and he was like, you had to end the test early because you couldn't pull yourself together. And my mom, who I had
Oh,
told earlier when he was not in the room that he had yelled at me and that's why they had to end the test early, her eyes like widened and she was like angry. And I could like see mom is entering feral angry at doctor state.
Mama Bear.
I asked him to refer me to other specialists for my other symptoms, for like my fatigue that is POTS related, but like is not only POTS. I asked him to refer me to someone else. And he was like, no, you don't have to do that because you're not actually ill enough to like need this and that.
How
Um,
does he make the distinction that you're not ill enough when you tell him I can't live my normal life?
I think the first time he saw me, he just saw a 20-year-old wheeled in with by the mother in a wheelchair. I told him I wasn't able to go to university anymore. He just thought I was lazy, I think. It wasn't until he actually saw the repetitive positive results that I'm actually very ill that he believed me.
You mentioned, I looked to the internet and the Discord. I think like before COVID, if you said that, people would be like, oh no, you're like one of those Google scholars, whatever, which I get because there's a lot of snake oil and there's a lot of
Yeah, definitely.
unhelpful things out there that, make promises, pie in the sky promises that don't deliver. But, I think that the difference here is that there's so many of us going through this at the same time that we can benefit from each other's experience and like I've made huge jumps in my journey from talking to people about theirs and learning what drugs they've tried or what processes they've gone through. So I want to make a distinction between the two things that
Yeah,
you're not going to the internet to read conspiracies. You're trying to connect with other real people and their real experiences in their own medical systems. And this hive mind is really kind of the best that we have right now, because we don't see that necessarily happening on the medical side in our own experience. There's not like, I don't have a group of medical specialists talking to each other about my case, which I think would be great, but that's not the reality. So we just find ways to fight on
yeah.
together, which
I mean,
is beautiful and sad.
talking to people was just so important to me and helped me feel less alone in my experience as well because long COVID is extremely isolating. I haven't seen my friends properly in ages. I have one friend who, shows up occasionally and we meet up, but like I haven't really lived proper
Your
life
life is on
in
hold.
on yeah, exactly, in a long time. And now I have people that I can talk to online and who understand me, who don't judge me when I say, "Oh, I haven't showered in 2 weeks," because like
Yeah, because we get it.
like people will be like, "Oh, that's disgusting," and it is kind of disgusting. But like when showering makes you crash, you do decide between, do I want to be clean or do I want to, be healthy,
Yeah, you
be
don't have
functional?
perfect choices here. I think also like we spend a lot of time reading like research and sharing it and talking about it, but it takes time to conduct the research and then for it to be published. And there's so much value in just going straight to the people since we don't have that research. So in the previous podcast episodes, Callie and Rush, they've been able to recover quite a bit of their previous style of living, and they've gotten a lot of quality of life back. But this episode, I think, is really important to show that this isn't necessarily the case for everyone, where there's a lot of people that are still struggling, who may struggle for a very long time. Their stories are worthwhile, like yours, and that we can learn from them and that we can root for them. I'm excited to eventually have a follow-up episode where we talk about where you are in your recovery. But I know that it's too early for that. But let's just talk a little bit about where you are today at this moment. What is your outlook for the future? Where you are in your recovery?
So currently, I think it's really too early to talk about recovery. I'm mostly just at this point where I'm managing my symptoms, and I feel like if I would remove all my medication and my compression garments and go back to the way I lived life before COVID or before I had my diagnosis, I would crash every day like I did pretty much at the beginning of my journey. I feel like that I'm still very confused and lost in my symptoms because I'm still getting diagnosed for a lot of things. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly is causing my severe GI symptoms. I'm still figuring out a lot about what symptoms I actually experience and how I can treat them, especially because there are some symptoms that come and go and some just randomly show up and then just kind of
Hmm.
like haven't left yet. Yeah, so right now I'm trying to figure out which meds actually do help me because I feel like if I can get my heart rate under control, I will be able to become more functional and be able to do more everyday things. But there's like pretty basic things that I struggle with, like for example, pain management for my endometriosis. I'm not able to take ibuprofen anymore simply because it interacts with my medication. I thought paracetamol or Tylenol was safe till I took that and I woke up in the night my body was overheating. I felt like I was suffocating, and it was a really horrible experience. I do think that paracetamol or Tylenol, that's the American word, does not mix well with my medication as well. So
So
now I'm not,
things that you were using before to treat
yeah,
your
exactly.
pre-existing conditions, you can't use anymore.
Yeah, I feel like that. And now I do not know which kind of medications I can use for my pain management at all. So
Ugh.
for now, I'm just kind of just hoping that I don't experience a very severe endometriosis flare in the near future until I kind of figure out or can talk to a doctor about this. So that's kind of one of the biggest things right now because I've been experiencing a lot of flares and headaches lately that have just been persistent and the things I usually do I can no longer do. Of course, the things that did help me kind of stabilize in my recovery or at least minimize the crashes are things I touched on earlier. So a lot of like drinking enough fluids, compression garments, electrolytes. Those are like the basic things that you treat POTS with, and that has definitely helped me minimize the symptoms. It gives you more functionality, but it doesn't take away how disabled you actually are. And it
Hmm.
doesn't like eliminate the fatigue. You might, be able to actually cook yourself a meal, but you'll still crash afterwards. So that's
You're
kind of like,
chained to that water bottle,
yeah,
that salt water bottle. Yeah, they're
definitely, yeah.
all 10 of them. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being willing to share your story and the nitty-gritty of it and also like traumatic parts of it because it's important for people that are going through the same thing to know they're not alone. And medical trauma is real, especially with chronic complex illness. Is there anything that you wish that people outside the long COVID community could understand? Probably a million things, but what's the
The
biggest thing?
the main thing I wish is that people my age understood that it can affect them too. That when I
Hmm.
say I don't feel safe having people over, I don't feel safe going out, is not me being a hypochondriac, it's me being realistic. Long COVID
Hmm.
does not only affect people with pre-existing conditions, it does not only affect people with weak immune systems or who are elderly. It can affect everyone. And I feel like a lot of young people, people my age, who I go to university with or who I'm friends with, they are kind of just like oblivious towards that like impending doom. And when I see them test positive for COVID and just treat it like it's nothing, I'm like anxious for them because I'm like, please don't get long COVID. It's the worst thing that ever happened to me. And they're just like, oh yeah, I have
Yeah.
COVID. It's nothing. And I'm like, no, it's the worst thing ever. Like, what if you get long COVID? They think I'm crazy then when I react that way because they're like, oh, what are the chances, right? But I'm like, women are more likely to get long COVID than men. Um, the chances are pretty high if you're a woman that you will develop long COVID. So maybe protect yourself, women. Wear your masks, get those vaccines.
Just to wrap up our episode here, is there anything else, Emerson, that you'd like to share with the long COVID community?
If you think you have long COVID, definitely advocate for proper care and help. Long COVID is misunderstood. There's not enough knowledge about it. And so, yeah, that's, I think, the most
Mhm.
something I wish I would have done earlier. So I'm just going to tell all of you to do it too.
Well, it's been really great talking with you, and I'm so excited for the future follow-up episode of Emerson's recovery, or at least a portion of recovery, and that you can enjoy seeing your friends again. I really want you to get on that train and go to that cafe and hang out with your friends and come back and not have a crash. So we're rooting
That
for
would be
you.
amazing. Yeah.
All right. I hope you listeners found this interesting. If you're listening to this on Spotify and would like to join our Discord community, we have a link in the description so you can come and find us. We hope to continue to put these episodes out once every month. So, because everyone's long COVID is unique and everyone has an entirely different experience, the things we covered today with Emerson may not resonate with some of you, and that's okay. But there's a lot of different stories out there, so keep tuning in. Please do subscribe and check up on us later for future episodes. And until next time, folks, this has been the COVID Long Haulers podcast, and we will catch you on the next one.